Get wild.
What y'all trying to do? Yo,
Yeah,
what y'all trying to do? We already gonna have like some company over there. Yeah, I say usually they start. Oh, I guess they hadn't spawned over there.
I relate to a bully get a come. It's something.
Yeah, you see them all the way over there. I keep on marking.
No, we're gonna bring this rather than. Up on this tree.
Yeah, let's get on.
You know, something right over here.
Damn, I can't find any good guns in this bitch, bro. I swear. Oh, you want to cross over to this other train?
Oh shit.
Somebody's already raided it, so be careful.
Yeah.
Don't look like anybody's still on here, though. I'm just running through it just to make sure.
Where's Blue? Get off right here and meet up with Blue.
Sure, let's do that.
Guy right here. Guy right here. Oh, damn. It's only one guy.
He ain't in here no more. I don't know where he went. Probably kept on trekking.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
Just get a thermal on him, honestly. He can't be far. Yeah, go after that for sure. We got company over here to the right. Yeah, he got out of this whole area. He was smart. I think he just tapped out of, like, he probably signed out because none of the cars around us are moving, nothing. You feel what I'm saying?
Daddy, the Nintendo 64, and he said that she has a Pikachu.
All right, we'll go wait in the living room where you can play in your room for the last 13 minutes. Alright, what we getting into, guys? Oh shit, shit, shit. There's a player over there near they. Oh shit. Squad of like 3 or 4.
This is going to be the biggest opportunity in. Hey, Bowtie Nation, Joseph Hogg here. And we highlight a lot of growth stocks here on the channel with all the must-own themes from AI, robotics, and biotech. I invest in most of those stocks, but only a few make the 5- and 6-figure investments in my portfolio. These are the stocks I'm buying to 10x my portfolio, the ones I have the most confidence in. And I'm proving it with over $500,000 in my portfolio in just these 10 stocks alone. I'm going to reveal those 10 biggest investments I've made, along with the research behind them. And then buy to get the entire theme in just one stock. So stick around for that. Going to get started here with SoFi Technologies, ticker SOFI. Not going to surprise any of you out there in the Bowtie Nation because I talk about this. The largest investment I have in my portfolio. You can see here, and over the last year, it has reached up in the $9, $10 price range, now down about $7. I believe it does go up much higher than that. This is the leader in digital banking, and it started out as a lender, like a lot of those other lenders, like Affirm, like LendUp, a lot of those other lenders. But SoFi was the first to get an actual banking charter, a banking license that helped it bring in those deposits, helped it do those traditional bank services, and offer a lot of those traditional banking services and products like checking, like deposits, bring in that easy funding money that a lot of those other lending sites couldn't do. That helped SoFi grow, and I believe it's going to help it grow in the future. You can see here, it is my largest investment. In fact, my largest investment by far at $187,000 in this one stock, up about 24% from where I started buying it at a price point of about $6 per share. This is just one of my accounts, folks. This is my main account I have there on E-Trade. I do have a lot of other investing accounts on other platforms, as well as different retirement accounts here on E-Trade. But this is the main one that I use for my growth stocks, my long-term stocks here. To give you a sense of the growth here in this company, why I believe this is going to become a major bank. So we're trading right now right around $5.50 book value. Okay, so that book value is really the main measure you want to use when you're looking at banks. That is the book value of its assets and minus liabilities. Assets, of course, are those loans it has out to people, and then the liabilities are the deposits that it takes from customers. And because those are updated frequently on the balance sheet, that book value is a very real-time sense of the net worth of that bank and how you use to measure banks. We're going to look at that valuation here in a little bit, but you can see here these growth in member additions, 41% year over year. And this is a bank that's been operating for several years now, still growing at a 41% year over year growth in its membership. That is how quickly this bank is adding people. We see here 19% year over year growth in its lending products. More importantly here, the financial services product up 39% year over year. And that is what I'm talking about. The power in that banking license, that banking charter that SoFi has, the power over these other digital banks that can't offer a lot of these financial services products. So what that banking license allows it to do, again, it allows it to bring in cheap funding sources for those deposits. A lot of those other banks like LendUp, like Affirm, they have to use different lending sources like debt, like equity to raise that money to invest in those loans. Whereas SoFi, it can bring in deposits, pay people nothing. You know how much your bank pays you on the deposits and the checking account that you leave, the money you leave in that account. SoFi can do that, and it can use that money to fund its loans and these other financial services products. Here we do see that the revenue and adjusted EBITDA, or those adjusted earnings, that growth has slowed down, but it's still a very strong 22% year-over-year growth in earnings, still a 23% year-over-year growth in earnings, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That EBITDA measure, that is very strong for our growth. If we look at other banks, in fact, we'll compare this against Regions Financial, another regional bank there, more of a traditional bank though. We'll see that the revenue growth is much slower, EBITDA growth much slower, so 22%, still very much a growth company here with SoFi, and we see that in the net members as well as the financial products increase year over year. We do see here in management's guidance, they are guiding to annual growth in revenue a little bit slower, still about 18% at the midpoint, 18% growth there, but 25% earnings growth. So they are expecting to become more efficient and turn that revenue growth, even though it's slower, into faster earnings growth. More importantly, down at the bottom here, their guidance for tangible book value growth. Again, with bank stocks, we are measuring them on their book value. Okay, that's where you get the valuation measures. That's where you really see the growth in the stock value. They're estimating, management is estimating $800 million to $1 billion in book value growth for this year. That is going to play into why I think this stock price goes much higher over this next year and the years after. For SoFi and all these stocks, we will be looking at analyst expectations for earnings as well as revenue growth. We do see that analysts do expect revenue growth 18% this year, followed by 15% next year. So we do see that slowdown a little bit in revenue growth. I think it actually beats that. It has beaten it in the past, those expectations. I think it beats that for faster revenue growth. But here, growing this revenue and then getting into income positive. Okay, it moved into earnings positive this year, 10 cents, or expected to be 10 cents per share net income over a loss of 36 cents per share. Last year, here you see this, last year was minus 36 cents per share earnings loss. Here it is 10 cents positive this year and 26 cents expected next year. So that is a very strong earnings growth as this company moves into, even though it's slower revenue growth, into very, very much more efficient and very much higher earnings growth there. Let's look at the valuation on SoFi Technologies, and this is where you're going to see why I think this stock is terrifically undervalued. We can compare this against other stocks. We do see here, if we go to the statistics tab on Yahoo Finance, we can see the current book value per share down here about $5.54. Again, that is, we use the book value per share on banks because they put their loans and their deposits on their balance sheet, value those at current market values. So we do see a very real-time idea of their loans and their deposits, their assets, they're on the book value, and we can use that to value the stocks, bank stocks. We do see the price to book, so the price of the shares divided by that book value, about 1.3 times. Now, generally on traditional banks, I like to see a valuation of 1 or less. That is a cheap bank stock for me. But these high growth stocks, especially high growth bank stocks, you are going to be paying more than 1.0 price to book value. We do see 1.3 times here. And what I want to look at, Regions Financial, obviously a much larger company, $20 billion market cap versus just $7.7 billion for SoFi Technologies. Regions much more of a traditional bank, but we see price to book value 1.3, so almost the same price to book value. Investors are paying the same price for every dollar of book value in this company. And look at this, look at the growth expected on Regions. Okay, Regions revenue growth expected this year, sales growth year over year, negative 5.8%. Regions is expected to see their revenue drop almost 6% over this year, only grow 4% next year. Okay, and then we see the earnings. Growth. Earnings are expected to fall this year, $1.95 per share versus $2.20 last year, to rebound a little bit to $2.20, but basically no earnings growth from last year, $2.20 a share, to $2.21 next year. No earnings growth on that company. And yet we do see that investors are still paying 1.33, actually more for this stock versus SoFi Technologies. So you see with that growth in earnings, with that growth in membership, financial products, SoFi is terrifically underpriced at this point. I will share analyst price targets for each of these stocks. Understand these are 1-year price targets for these stocks, for these 10x growth stocks that I'm holding. Companies I think can dominate their industry and become much larger. I want to be holding them for 3, 5, 10 years down the road. I think SoFi can become a major bank here. And if we just compare that to two regions like we did, we can see how much bigger this bank can grow. If we look at Regions Financial right now has a book value per share of $17. $17 book value per share for that. If SoFi grows to $17 a share book value, and we saw how it's adding up to $1 billion in book value just this year, or expected to. If we want to see what that would be per share, we want to look at share statistics, shares outstanding, about $1 billion or 1 billion shares outstanding. We see this right here, shares outstanding, 1 billion shares. If it grows book value by $1 billion over this year, that's growing by a dollar book value. So 554. So it's growing book value by about 20%, about 18% a year. So if SoFi can grow anything like to the point of, or to the size of Regions Financial at 17 times book value and keep that 1.3 times price to book value per share, we got something like $17 book value times 1.3. That is a $22 share price against $7 currently. You see why I think SoFi is terrifically undervalued right here. We can compare it to a lot of these other traditional banks that have nothing like the revenue growth SoFi has, and we see that SoFi is undervalued here. It should go much higher into the future. But just looking at those 1-year targets from analysts, we do have 15 analysts ranking the stock here. Average price target of $8.27, only about 10% upside from where it is now. $12 would be a 60% upside to the high target. Low target of $4. We do see some pessimism in the analyst community for this stock, but I don't know what they're looking at, because everything I'm looking at with that growth in membership, growth in financial services, growth in revenue and valuation compared to other bank stocks, this is the bank stock to own. Next biggest holding here, CrowdStrike Holdings, ticker CRWD. Obviously had some trouble recently. I picked up more shares, added to my position, because this is one of the best cybersecurity companies and really the best theme that I'm watching over the next 5 years. Really, we're looking at the big picture for these cybersecurity stocks. That's why a big part of my portfolio is on this, and three cybersecurity stocks are going to be on this list because that growth is already there. The 20-fold increase in the number of malicious programs just over the last 10 years, folks, and it cost in the tens of millions to recover from each cyber attack. Research by IBM of more than 500 cyber attacks shows the average a company spends to recover after that attack, with healthcare the top target, and companies spending over $10 million just each time their system is compromised. That's lifted cybersecurity budgets to over 10% of their overall tech budgets from just 8.6% 3 years ago. So very much a focus on cybersecurity within companies here. That advent of AI is going to bring another wave of threats, boosting the need for this protection. We're going to compare this across a lot of the other cybersecurity companies, including the other 3 on this list. But CrowdStrike has a really interesting threat intelligence capability, and it's leading here in the software's ability to work on that multi-tenant basis across many endpoints, including the Internet of Things appliances. You can see it is my second largest position here, just over $77,000. It is down about 6.6% from where I started buying it. I have dollar cost averages down as it hits those problems that we'll talk about, that outage here over the last couple of months, but just down 6.6%. And I think this one goes back up to that 350, 400 within the next couple of years. And to give you an idea of how I'm picking these stocks, this level of analysis I'm going through with these, I put together a spreadsheet for the cybersecurity stock. You're going to be doing this on any stock in any industry you look at. But I just did this for cybersecurity right now. Again, it is one of my favorite themes over the next 5, even 10 years for growth. You're going to see a lot of money go into these stocks. So I think that's going to mean a lot of these stocks, even the worst in the group, is going to do very well just on that higher tide, that rising tide lifting all boats here. So we're going to talk through this growth for each stock, some of the things I'm looking at in it, but you're going to want to do this for any stock you buy. First, within this, I just took these top 6 cybersecurity firms. So the largest 6 cybersecurity firms, obviously in this global cybersecurity market, much larger than this, but I wanted to see of these 6, which ones really control the market, how much percentage market size share they have each. So of this $25.7 billion. Now, I have seen estimates for the global cybersecurity market at somewhere around 50 to 60 billion dollars. So this would be about half of it. But just 6 companies control about half of the global cybersecurity market. So very important to see which ones are leading, which ones are dominant with those and getting the most revenue. So I took that. I found 35%. Palo Alto Networks is 35% of the market within these among these six leaders right here. So very important. Any company that is able to dominate the leaders in its space. We also see Fortinet at 22%. So what you're going to see here in these fundamentals, I highlighted the best, the outliers really in green here. It really can kind of give you a visual sense of who is leading in a lot of these fundamentals that I'm looking at. Year over year revenue growth, obviously it's a little bit harder to grow $9 billion a year than it is maybe to grow a little bit smaller, $2.5 billion a year. So revenue growth is a little bit lower for Palo Alto Networks, just 13% there. CrowdStrike, the one we're talking about, only 15% of the market, but growing at 27.5% revenue growth a year. So very strong revenue growth. How I found that, folks, you can go here to Yahoo Finance, you can go here to analysis and come down here. You can see 25%, 27.5% expected revenue growth this year, 22% next. So it is expected to slow down. Naturally, as companies get larger, they're going to slow their revenue growth a little bit, but 27%, 22%, very strong. We always, with these growth stocks, that's what we're looking for, is the strong revenue growth, 15, 20% a year. Next, we're looking at operating margins. So that core profitability for a company, the operating margin is what's left over of sales of that revenue after paying the gross suppliers, after paying the operating expenses. So those core expenses to produce whatever it is that you produce at the company. And this operating margin is the profitability left over after that. We do see here that, CrowdStrike a little bit lower here, just 1.4% operating margin. Now, I did take that from Yahoo Finance here, go into the statistics, and you can go here to this operating margin, 1.4% here for CrowdStrike. So again, statistics, come down here to the operating margin. Again, that is the core measure of profitability for a company and really how well management is doing at turning that revenue into operating earnings. Okay. And one problem with that is GAAP. So that does include a lot of the things that aren't necessarily real cash flow earnings. So some of these are going to look artificially low. For example, Zscaler's and Cloudflare does show that it's a negative operating margin when in fact it is a positive operating margin. They do have positive earnings on that, just how it's calculated on an accounting basis. But it still shows us how to compare those against each one. So we do see that Fortinet, 30% operating margin, Checkpoint Software, 33%, really leading the space, really much higher than a lot of these other cybersecurity companies. Finally, for this last measure, it's valuation, right? Price to revenue. How much are investors paying? How much are investors paying for every dollar of revenue from that company? We see here $15, $10. Now, I didn't highlight this field because what I'm really looking at is price to revenue per growth. Okay, I don't care if a company is trading for a high price to revenue, price to earnings ratio if it is growing at 20, 30, 40% a year. Okay, if it is growing at 20 or 30% a year, it deserves a very much higher valuation measure compared to a lot of the other companies that aren't growing quite as fast. So you're going to see that in a lot of these. You're going to see that some companies, Fortinet is a great example here, only growing at a 10% year over year revenue growth, trading at 10 times price to revenue. So you just look at that price to revenue, that valuation, and you're saying, well, hell, Fortinet's only 10 times. Checkpoint Software, only 8.8 times price to revenue. These are the cheap stocks in it, but they're only growing 6%, 10% revenue growth a year. They are not growing, so they're not doing something right compared to these other companies that can grow their revenue by 27%, 20% a year. So while CrowdStrike might be more expensive at 18 times price to revenue, I'm willing to pay that because it's growing at 27% a year. So what you want to do to adjust that price to revenue valuation for the growth is you divide it. You take this price to revenue, so the 15.26, and then you divide it by this year over year revenue growth. So that's 15.26. here we go, 15.26 divided by, now you don't do the percentage, you just do the number here. So divided by 13.7 and you get a 1.11 price to revenue per growth. Okay, so that's 1.11. And again, I highlighted the cheapest in those price to revenue growth. So if you want to look for cheap stocks, don't do it just by the price to revenue or the price to earnings. Do it adjusted for growth as well. And what we do see here is that CrowdStrike and Zscaler after it fell after the earnings report is actually the cheapest among cybersecurity companies. Probably why I picked up more shares, huh? So picked up more shares of Zscaler because it is the cheapest cybersecurity stock right now and still has great growth, 20% a year growing revenue. So we got CrowdStrike, Zscaler, and Cloudflare there as the cheapest among those groups. Now, of course, the big news for CrowdStrike over the last couple of months was that ginormous outage that they had. A software update by the company caused a lot of computers, especially travel computers at the airlines, Microsoft to go down. Probably the biggest outage in history, they're calling it. So of course, a lot of customers, that growth might be in question, that revenue growth might be in question as they have to give incentives to their customers to come back and not leave the company. So we want to analyze how bad that's going to be, see if maybe the market even overreacted to that, which actually I think they do. So we did see that CrowdStrike cut its guidance in the wake of that outage that hit millions of people there. We can read through this. And right now they're saying that the reduced guidance is due to more to 60 million in incentives it's providing related to what it's calling customer commitment packages. So basically right here, what CrowdStrike is now saying because of that because of that outage, it is paying $60 million in incentives for customers to come back, to stay with the company. We can see here that in July, that bug did in the software update did knock 8.5 million computers offline, delaying a lot of the flights there, especially with Microsoft users there. But if we think about this, 60 million worth of deals, and I'm sure that number is going to be much higher. Some of the lost revenue they take, as well as the other incentives they're going to have to offer. But $60 million, even if we jump that up to 100 million, if we look at the change in the market cap of this stock and the change in the in the revenue and that kind of thing, I think the market way overreacted to this, and you can see that kind of in the share price that has come back up from right around $200 a share when that outage did happen. We can look at here; it fell down to about $217 per share. It is now back up to $245, even after coming down over the last few days. But if we look at that, this market cap, the market value of those shares before that outage was right around $100 billion, $90 billion. That market cap, $30 billion in value have been taken off of that company because of the outage. So what you want to do, you want to apply that to the price to revenue. Is to see, okay, is the company really going to lose that much in revenue, that much in earnings? So if we look at this, we are trading, so let's use this year's earnings right around $3.9 billion or revenue right around $3.9 billion. They're saying the revenue is going to make this year. So we can see if we do the math here, it was trading right around $392 a share. Or $90 billion revenue. So 90 billion divided by that 3.9, that was about 23 times on a price to revenue basis. Now, if this is a $60 billion company, okay, so that was that $90 billion market cap it was trading at before the outage, trading at 23 times price to revenue, okay, 23 times. Now it's 60 billion. So 60 billion divided by 23. Now the market is estimating that it's only going to do $2.6 billion in revenue, $2.6 billion on those valuations. So if it stays at the same valuation, 23 times price to revenue, this $60 billion market cap, we can back into the estimate that the market is thinking that it's going to do in revenue. So basically,